So, do you remember when your favorite NXT wrestler got called up to the main roster and you thought, yes, hell yeah, this is it? You know, the music hits, the crowd probably pops, or they don't know. Doesn't matter. Twitter explodes either way, and then 6 months later, 1 month later, nothing. Or even worse, they're still on TV, but they don't feel like them anymore. They've completely changed who they are, right? People call it the NXT Call-Up Curse. Like it's bad luck, like it's fate, like the wrestling gods, aka Vince McMahon, just spun a wheel and just decides who survives Raw and SmackDown. What if it's not a curse at all though? What if it's a systemic problem? I recently came across this tweet on X or Twitter. Actually, people post this every other month. Like there's multiple people that have this same exact post. It makes the rounds every other year, but it says, who did the main roster fumble the hardest from NXT Black and Gold? And the image has Adam Cole, Aleister Black, Johnny Gargano, Andrade, Pete Dunne, Tommaso Ciampa, pardon me. It has, Adrian Neville, or Pac as he goes by now, and he has the infamous, the biggest fumble of all probably, in many people's eyes, Finn Balor. Now, in my opinion, I think the main roster didn't fail these wrestlers because they weren't good enough. I think that they failed because they were never built for it. Now, hear me out, let me cook. Before we start, let me introduce myself. My name is Mandi, and this is MandiMania. And if you like wrestling being talked about, like an actual fan, and not like a sort of like robotic, thing, talking about numbers and graphs and ratings and money and ticket sales or whatever. I don't really care about none of that. All I care about is, the stories and, the work rate and maybe the stories behind the stories probably. Right? If you like that, if you're into that sort of thing, hit subscribe and let's just get into it. I think the uncomfortable truth that no one likes to admit is that a lot of NXT stars didn't fail because they couldn't hang. They failed because NXT was never preparing them for Raw and SmackDown. From the jump, NXT Black and Gold was not a feeder system, or at least not for WWE. It wasn't a feeder system for WWE. Eventually, as we all saw, it was mostly a feeder system for AEW. In fact, it was the template for AEW. In my opinion, right? NXT Black and Gold was a third brand, or at least it was Triple H's vision for a third brand, his attempt at a third brand, his vision for the future of wrestling. It had indie darlings, long matches, slow burn storytelling, and it had crowds that already knew who you were and why you mattered. It was this self-containing, what did they call it? Self-containing ecosystem, right? Now, speaking of the crowds, I think the crowd was an even bigger hindrance because the crowd was trying to get themselves over. That Full Sail Arena crowd is known as being the best crowd in all of professional wrestling, and I think that they would cheer for anybody because they were trying to get themselves over. In my opinion, anyways. In my opinion, I've seen it. I think that becomes a hindrance because as a wrestler, you don't know what's working or what's not. Because the NXT crowd, they just chant for anything, really. I mean, it's not that everybody that came to NXT was a success or was insanely over, but for the most part, they would get anything over. Right? Guys like No Way Jose got over. You know what I mean? But, let's just talk about names, examples, right? Ciampa and Gargano, for example. These are names that are in this picture. Tommaso Ciampa and Johnny Gargano. In NXT, they had a generational run. They started off as a great tag team, legendary tag team, DIY. They were underdogs, pure emotion, right? I'm not gonna get into too much detail. Tag team champions together. They were NXT champion. Johnny Gargano is a Triple Crown champion in NXT. But on the main roster, it was a bit rocky, to say the least, But throughout 2024, 2025, they're tag team champions, right? They win the tag team championships at WrestleMania, and then they turn heel and they become a comedy gimmick. It just fell apart, you know. And right now it's not looking good for Johnny Gargano. I don't know what they're doing with him. Time will tell. Maybe they're just trying to build him up into a sympathetic babyface. But Tommaso Ciampa is gone from WWE as of right now. He's gone. He had his first match in AEW, became TNT champion. And I'm really looking forward to what they do with him in AEW. Honestly, I think they're going to do some good work with him in the future. Looks promising for him. Because Tommaso Ciampa, despite his age, I don't even want to say despite his age, maybe because of his age, because he's aging beautifully. And like his conditioning, his physique, it just makes for a work rate wrestler. He's gonna fit in AEW, but in WWE, Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa, they did not translate well, which is just unfortunate because there are some good wrestlers, the two of them, Adam Cole and the Undisputed Era, you know, names that are synonymous with NXT Black and Gold. Who is NXT Black and Gold without these four men? Adam Cole, Roderick Strong, Kyle O'Reilly, Bobby Fish, the Undisputed Era, Shock the System. You know, you hear that intro, you know some shit's about to go down. Someone is about to get jumped, or we're about to witness an instant classic, whether it's in the singles division with Adam Cole, tag team division with Roderick Strong and Kyle O'Reilly, or any mixture of the other three members. But on the main roster, they didn't even make it to the main roster. Rumor has it Adam Cole was said to be Keith Lee's manager on the main roster. That's what Vince McMahon wanted, which is just crazy, which just shows that it's just there's just a conflict when it comes to that, right? With Vince McMahon's vision and Triple H's vision when it comes to NXT and people that come from NXT, right? They never got a chance to exist in that final form on the main roster. Adam Cole left soon after, Kyle O'Reilly left, Bobby Fish left. Roderick Strong has tried to stay around for a bit, formed Diamond Mine, but I think he realized that he was just going to be used to put other talent over. And that's fine, you know, that's cool and that's fine. But like when you're the type of wrestler that Roderick Strong is, I think you're going to want more for yourself. I think you're going to want more for your career. And every single member of the Undisputed Era was in AEW. They are now in AEW with the exception of Bobby Fish. Damn, prayers up for Bobby Fish, man. I hope he's well. I hope he's well wherever he is. But yeah, they never really got as successful in AEW as they were in NXT Black and Gold. But you know, we will always have those memories. We will always have those memories of NXT Black and Gold, the way that they were terrorizing the NXT roster back then, right? And then we have Aleister Black. Same story, bro. Aura, mystique, presence. You know, the bell rang on Raw, and then he's suddenly cutting vague promos on SmackDown in a weird room, and he's waiting for someone to knock on his door. I don't know what that was, but again, it didn't get a chance to materialize. The main roster at the time that he was called up was not the right environment for slow burn storytelling. It was just not looking good for him. And then what happened? He made his way to AEW. He had a good run with the House of Black. You know, he had a good run. He never became world champion, but that's fine. Not everyone is meant to be world champion. You know, there's so many stars on AEW. No, I wouldn't say stars per se, but like there's so many, like, I don't know, the vision for AEW. I think I'm starting to get AEW now, which is why I'm watching it a lot more than I'm watching WWE. They're now at a point where they're now translating, like with AEW. At first, like I got the sense that it's not really about who you are as a character or as a person or what your motivations are, other than being the best wrestler and being the world champion. Now I'm getting a sense of like they're piecing together that like some wrestlers are like, yo, let's bring together who I am, my motivations, and let's bring together what I can do in the ring too. And it's a nice combination, and I see a lot of people that are really like doing that really well. You know, guys like Swerve Strickland, who came from NXT, by the way, Samoa Joe, who was in NXT, by the way. I'm going to talk about him too. But like there's so many people that like are now in a position where like they are character driven, they are long form storytelling driven, which is something that I love to see. And yeah, and I also like the way that AEW shoots their shows, man. It's just more aesthetically pleasing for me to watch, and it makes for a more sports like feel. But everything just looks good. I don't know what type of cameras or color. There's not color grading, but like whatever it is, it's working. Okay, and then there's Shinsuke Nakamura. Oh, one of the most charismatic wrestlers alive, Shinsuke Nakamura. He debuted on NXT, hype through the freaking roof. The match with Sami Zayn, the rivalry with Samoa Joe, NXT Championship run. He was so good, bro. He got on the main roster, started off slowly, won the Royal Rumble, lost against AJ Styles, which is, I guess, it's not a bad person to lose to, but the manner in which he lost, and then the aftermath, the following storyline, it's just, and from there, it was just start, stop pushes with Shinsuke. It's almost like they didn't know what to do with his charisma, and it's like they didn't want to fully commit to a Shinsuke Nakamura push, which is just, I don't know. He's still on the main roster. He's still, just had a banger of a match with AJ Styles. He lost to Tama Tonga the last time I saw him. He lost to Tama Tonga on SmackDown, which is okay. I think they're pushing a storyline there. Maybe pushing Tama Tonga just a little bit to let him do his own thing outside of the bloodline, which is good. It's going to give the fans a chance to familiarize themselves with Tama Tonga outside of the bloodline. Right now, his identity is that he's a member of the bloodline. So let's just see what he can do. But I don't like that they're using Shinsuke as cannon fodder for that. But let's see. Maybe they're about to tell a good story with this. My hopes aren't high. The next wrestler is Samoa Joe. Bro, they let Samoa Joe go because of his quote-unquote age. And he's injury prone. They had him on commentary for like a year. Pardon me. For like a year he was doing commentary. He signs to AEW and he's in the middle of a crazy run. 2-time AEW World Champion, and he shows that he has the work rate. He still can be a compelling character, Other than the fact that on Raw, you could feel the ceiling lower the second he hit Raw. On AEW, bro, they put the strap on him twice, And then we have Karrion Kross, who I never really got the hype. When he first debuted, I was like, okay, this is cool, this is interesting. A few times I've seen him in the ring. You ring the bell, it's like, and then, but like still, he got on the main roster. They changed his whole character. They removed everything that was interesting about him. They put him in the ring with Jeff Hardy, and he loses in 2 minutes, which is like, granted, he lost against the GOAT, but still, you're clearly showing that you have no faith in him with the way that you booked him, right? So like, you're not really pushing him. You're like speed running his failure on the main roster. You get to see a pattern here. They're good in NXT. They go to AEW, whatever. But like, I don't think these were developmental failures. They were like translation failures, But anyways, here's the key point of the whole video. NXT taught wrestlers how to be great wrestlers, right? They did have personalities, some of them. They did have characters. They did have storylines. Slow burning storylines. And yeah, but they were all like, the main roster demands you to be a television character first. And nobody really bridged that gap, but also because of the ecosystem, the current environment at the time, with Vince McMahon at the helm, they just didn't fit what he saw as the ideal wrestler, right? And also, here's the thing that nobody wants to say out loud. A lot of these call-ups were never meant to be main roster stars in the eyes of Vince McMahon. They weren't created there. They weren't shaped there. They didn't fit that version of star that the machine already understood 50 years prior, bro. So instead of adjusting to the system, the system really flattened them. Like I said with guys like Karrion Kross, right? They took away everything that made him special. But I was only talking about men, right? Let's look at the women and why they were the exception to this. Because You have great examples like the Four Horsewomen: Sasha Banks, Bailey, Charlotte, and Becky Lynch. Bailey was a bit was let's not say anything about that. She is successful, but it took her a bit longer. But you have others, Asuka, Bianca Belair, Rhea Ripley. So why did they succeed? Right? I think, in my opinion, why they succeeded more than the men is because the women's division at the time needed a complete reset. Remember, they came at a time during the women's evolution or women's revolution, right? So there was no rigid template to break into. So there was no decades-old expectation of what a women's star should be. Or rather, they were at a point where they wanted to scrape it. They wanted to start from scratch. And NXT at the time didn't just develop them, but like it redefined what women in WWE could be. They were at a significant advantage, right? So when they hit Raw, when they hit SmackDown, they weren't like indie darlings like entering a hostile territory. They were already like the solution to a problem that WWE needed to fix. So not to say that it was easy for them from the jump, but they were the solution to a problem. And it's like, we need something new. Something new has been forming and building in NXT. We have women who are having banger matches, and on top of everything else that I mentioned, they were just so damn good, bro. So damn good. Even now in NXT, a lot of the women in NXT are miles ahead of the men, right? So is the system broken now? I don't think so, because it gets interesting at this point, right? Because the modern NXT is no longer pretending to be a third brand, and now it's a feeder system again. It's geared towards what WWE wants: the characters, the stories, the performance center, the NIL, LFG. It's all about creating people who can survive television. They're taking athletes with actual like athletic backgrounds, people that play football, American football, netball and stuff like that, volleyball, gymnasts, and they're making them stars, characters, and they're making them ready to be television performers, which is good, which is really good. And it was a rocky start when they did NXT 2.0 back in the day, but now it seems they found a pattern. First success, for example, someone like Braun Breaker. It's not that he's better per se, but I think it's because he was built with that main roster in mind. It also helps that he has the physique, he has the athletic, history, that pedigree also of being a Steiner, a legacy superstar, right? And also he has that natural intensity, and also he has a character whereby he's not really playing someone different. He's just taking everything about himself and then just multiplying it in intensity by 100. And those are the best kind of characters, when you get to play yourself, an extension of yourself, and you just make it fit for television. I mean, same with recent successes like Rhea. They have a clear identity, they have a clear role, and they have like a clear like long-term plan for them. So I don't think the curse itself was a superstition. I think it's just like there was like a mismatch of philosophies there. NXT was creating art. It was about showcasing the art form of professional wrestling, the in-ring work part of it, and the main roster was producing weekly television show, and it was geared towards children. It was not an adult focused environment, should I say. So when those two worlds collided, obviously talent got crushed in between, and it's business versus art. The business is always gonna win. That's where the money is, right? So in closing, I don't think the NXT Call-Up Curse was bad luck. I think that it was just like the result of asking wrestlers, train for one ecosystem to survive in another. I really didn't speak their language, and until WWE learns how to fully translate talent instead of flattening it, like if they get another wrestler from like AEW or TNA or like another indie, I think that if they keep repeating that cycle, it is just gonna be same shit, different toilet, But now NXT is more like, okay, if we get an indie superstar, let's teach them the ropes, let's show them we do things here in the WWE, and it's showing to be successful. You know, Javon Evans is doing good work on the main roster. Ethan Page is doing good work in NXT. He's playing a character that I've never seen him play before. He is. As soon as he gets on the main roster, it's gonna be so good. I can already see it. Him and Chelsea Green, that combo with Chelsea Green is just really good. You know, and we have guys like Ricky Saints, who is playing the same character. So I think they just want they just want the WWE crowd to get more familiar with him, right? Because they didn't change anything about him, only his name and his theme song, but the presentation is still the same. So I think for him, it's more a sense of like, let's get the fans ready for him. I don't think he needs more seasoning, really. He's a good character, he's a good promo, he's good in the ring, right? But anyways, guys, if you made it this far, drop a comment. Tell me, who do you think got hurt most by the NXT call-up system? And tell me who your favorite NXT superstars were during the time. But yeah, there's a lot that I could have spoken about. There's a lot that I missed out on. So if you have any more examples, sound off in the comments. Let's have a discussion in the comments. But yeah, I'm Mandi. This is MandiMania, and I'll catch you on the next one. Thank you for watching.